The media fixates on the kinetic, the missile launch, the declarations of being prepared for war. This is a strategic misdirection. It is loud, expensive, and designed for an audience conditioned to view conflict as a symmetrical event. It is not how a systemic attack begins. The primary vector of modern asymmetric warfare is not explosive. It is silence. The true battleground is 3 kilometers beneath the ocean's surface. Here, the nervous system of the global financial order, the subsea data cables, lies unprotected. A state facing a solvency crisis, the Venezuela blueprint, is incentivized not to build a carrier, but to acquire the means to sever this connection. Cutting a cable does not create an explosion. It creates a vacuum, a liquidity black hole. It blinds the global central banking system, which, according to recent reports, requires unified support for figures like the Federal Reserve Chairman just to maintain systemic confidence. Without data, there is no confidence. There is only mathematical panic. This is the protocol to create the blind Leviathan, a global superpower stripped of its primary sensory apparatus, its satellite intelligence, its financial data streams. Its conventional military superiority becomes a strategic liability. According to CSIS analysts, a weapon system with no target data is a systemic risk to itself and the global order. The calculus for the insolvent state is cold. The kinetic cost for the dominant power to even patrol these assets is prohibitive. RUSI reports confirm the asymmetric advantage is absolute. By weaponizing silence, the aggressor guarantees a disproportionate kinetic response, an escalation spiral they can predict, control, and exploit. A nation-state does not initiate a systemic conflict because it is strong. It does so because it is insolvent. The primary motive is not conquest. It is domestic liability management. The war is a kinetic instrument on a national balance sheet, deployed when the cost of social cohesion exceeds the cost of external conflict. This is not a theory. It is a diagnosis. According to analysis from CSIS and RUSI, the war in Ukraine must be framed as a solvency crisis. Facing untenable pension liabilities and a severe demographic deficit, the state required a massive, externalized event to restructure its domestic obligations and rally a population against a manufactured threat. An unpopular war, therefore, becomes a grimly rational pivot. It is a launch-on-warning protocol against internal collapse. When a state's conventional military power cannot guarantee a victory, its strategic calculus shifts from force-on-force engagement to systemic disruption. Weakness forces the pivot to asymmetry. This is the Venezuela blueprint. A nation once counted among the world's richest due to oil wealth, now a vector for regional instability following total economic collapse. The terminal decline of a state's solvency incentivizes attacks on the systemic liabilities of the global order. This posture is echoed in repeated declarations from states like Iran, which, when facing maximum pressure, signals it is prepared for war. The target is not a carrier strike group. That is a kinetic cost they cannot afford. The real target is the financial and energy architecture that the carrier group protects. The goal is to make the cost of containment greater than the cost of capitulation. The mathematical certainty is this: as sovereign balance sheets continue to deteriorate globally, the incentive structure for asymmetric warfare accelerates. The adversary is not aiming for military parity. They are aiming for your solvency by attacking the system's financial choke points. The kinetic cost exchange ratio has inverted. The Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, documents this with mathematical certainty. A $5 million main battle tank is now a systemic liability, vulnerable to a $500 FPV drone. This is not a tactical problem. It is an economic one. The cost to destroy is now orders of magnitude lower than the cost to defend. This phenomenon is clinically referred to as the democratization of violence. Lethality is no longer the exclusive domain of solvent superpowers. For a state entering a solvency crisis, weaponizing this asymmetry is not a choice, it is a protocol. It allows them to bypass conventional defenses and attack the enemy's balance sheet directly, making every high-cost asset a liability. The conventional map is obsolete. Conflict is no longer defined by borders, but by vectors of economic fragility. The operational theater is not a nation, but a gray zone, a region selected for its pre-existing instability. These zones are not the cause of the conflict. They are the symptom, a proxy laboratory for staging asymmetric attacks against the global financial architecture. A state facing a terminal solvency crisis, the Venezuela blueprint, has a mathematical incentive to weaponize this architecture. RUSI documents confirm this playbook. When a state's economic future is zero, its only remaining leverage is to become a systemic liability. It cannot compete symmetrically, so it seeks to attack the opponent's center of gravity, liquidity, and energy flow. Tensions with actors like Iran, who openly state they are prepared for war, must be viewed through this economic lens, not a purely military one. This is where the gray zone becomes the launch point. CSIS analysts identify states with high internal political stress, like South Africa, or even developed nations with critical supply chain nodes like Canada, as ideal proxy laboratories. The insolvent aggressor doesn't need to invade. It need only introduce a small, deniable catalyst, sabotage, cyber attack, organized unrest, into the unstable system and let physics do the rest. The objective is to force a kinetic response from the dominant power. Responding to a pipeline explosion in a politically volatile region is a trap. It increases the kinetic cost, drains strategic resources, and validates the aggressor's narrative of global instability. Conventional military superiority becomes a strategic liability, bogged down in a mire it cannot pacify, while the insolvent state, the true vector, watches from a distance, having paid almost nothing for the chaos it engineered. This isn't warfare, it's a liquidation of the global order. The launch on warning doctrine is not a choice, it is a mathematical protocol. According to analysts at CSIS, it is the predetermined response to the tyranny of time. The flight of an intercontinental ballistic missile from launch to impact is approximately 30 minutes. The protocol is designed to ensure a retaliatory strike is launched before incoming warheads can destroy a nation's own command, control, and kinetic assets. It is a legacy system from an analog era, hardwired for a specific threat. The systemic liability is that the doctrine trusts its data. It assumes the signals it receives, or fails to receive, are authentic. This is where the insolvent state, following the Venezuela blueprint, finds its leverage. An asymmetric cyber attack does not need to defeat a carrier group. It only needs to blind the early warning radar network. This induces the fog of digital war. When the screens go black, the 30-minute timer is assumed to have started. The commander is now forced into a zero-sum decision based on an absence of information. The protocol dictates that a total loss of signal is evidence of a decapitation strike in progress. To hesitate is to accept annihilation. To launch is to initiate global escalation. The insolvent state forces the superpower to attack itself. The kinetic cost of the superior military becomes a strategic liability triggered by a non-kinetic, deniable vector. The math is irrefutable. The escalation spiral is not a risk. It is a pre-calculated outcome of the system's own internal logic. The Venezuela blueprint dictates that a state actor facing a terminal solvency crisis will not declare a conventional war. It is mathematically irrational. Instead, it will execute a series of calibration shots against the systemic liabilities of its adversary, the global financial architecture. These are not attacks designed for destruction. They are intelligence-gathering operations to measure response protocols. Citing analysis from RUSI, an insolvent state, mirroring Iran's declared prepared-for-war posture, must test the dominant power's financial launch-on-warning capability, the speed and volume of emergency liquidity injections from central banks like the Federal Reserve. The forecast event for the next 12 months is a targeted, multi-hour data integrity failure at a major Western financial clearinghouse, not a blackout, but a corruption of settlement data. The event will be officially attributed to a non-state ransomware group or a cascading software update error, providing perfect deniability. The true objective is to force an emergency response, allowing the attacking state to collect precise data on the time it takes the Federal Reserve and ECB to flood the system with liquidity and stabilize the narrative. This is not warfare. It is the collection of targeting data for a future solvency attack.